Welcome back to the Reaper blog. This is what's new in Reaper 7.74. We'll also cover some of the changes from previous couple updates. We'll talk about the new multi-mono and multi-stereo effects containers, changes to rendering, track grouping, sample edits, and more. Render. Divide render source settings into two dropdowns. Add render source help button. Add menu item to replace existing preset with current settings. Project settings. Remove redundant render format configuration. Render format should be configured via render window. All right, so we're going to go up to File and then Render. This change actually happened in 7.70. I just missed it in the changelog. Basically, the long source section of the rendered file window has now been condensed into sort of different categories. So what are we rendering? The master mix, selected tracks, master mix and stems, region render matrix, selected media items, and razor edit areas. So let's say we do master mix and stems. We can still choose entire project and things like that. So the middle option is disabled because it's not relevant. If we do selected track stems, then we have via master fast, or with master effects. Fast means in parallel. The parallel render option. Region render matrix, we also have via master fast, in parallel, or with master effects. Selected media items, via master fast, via master effects, with master effects, or as one file. And razor edit areas, same features. Now, if you're confused about any of those things, there's a new help button. It says question mark here. We'll bring up a help window explaining every single one of those options. So that just condenses sort of a longer list in the source section into just kind of what's relevant for each of the main sort of categories of what you'll be rendering. In the preset section, it's now easier to update a previously saved preset. So let's say I choose render with limiting, and I want to make some changes like resample mode. Let's change this to rate brain. I'll just check my limiting settings. That looks correct. And I'll just go to preset, all settings, replace preset, and then I'll select the same preset from the list, render with limiting, and now that's saved. This list also shows you which preset is currently loaded. And I'll show you the project settings. If we go to the media page, there is no render format here anymore. We have the option for applying effects, glue, and freeze. We have the recording format, but there isn't the redundant render format, which could be confusing sometimes when you have all of these render settings and your project was slightly different. Just configure your render window like this, hit Save Settings, and you can close the window, and then any actions that use the render settings will be using these rather than the project settings. Projects. Allow opening projects in read-only mode via open dialog or by file attribute. If loading a read-only RPP file, display read-only in the title bar. File open or Command O. Let's grab an RPP file. And we have this option here, open read-only. This will prevent you from making any changes. At the top of the window, it says read-only modified, and if I do a Command S to save, it will act like it's a save as, prompt you for saving the location and the name, because you're not supposed to overwrite a read-only file. So if you want to open something and make sure that you're not going to make any changes to that original file, this is how that's done. That is the open read-only flag in the file open window. Track panels. Display metering options when clicking meter. Display recording options, input quantize, format, etc. when clicking record mode button. So in this update, when we click on one of the meters, we now have the input list as before. A lot of people don't know about that. But we also have a meters submenu where we can change the just this meter to show LU of SM, stereo RMS, or the default of stereo peaks. I'm going to record on this track, and then I'll click on the mode drop down. And in here, we have the options for track record settings. And in here, we can quantize a MIDI recording. We can change the recording format. We can record to a secondary audio path. And once again, that is the record mode button where it says in for input mode. We have the track recording settings there now. Not talking about the actual input selection. Track recording settings, as before, can also be found by right-clicking on the record arm button. Grouping. Support automatically grouping folder child tracks or folder sibling tracks for media and Razor Edit as separate settings. Support grouped Razor Edits on hidden tracks. The automatic grouping can be found by right-clicking on the Group button, and we set this to automatically group all tracks for Razor Editing. So let's just do the basic setting as an example. So that's on. There's these little sort of triangular indicators for that. If I select anything, they are automatically grouped. If I trim, if I split, if I trim the other end, yeah, there we go. Fades, moving, everything is linked as well. Razor Edits automatically go across multiple tracks. So that's the automatic editing Razor editing function. I didn't have to create a group. That's a track-based automatic grouping. And that's for all tracks. The other option that we previously had was for selected tracks. If I just have one track, it's independent. If I have two tracks selected, anything that's on that track will be edited together for the selected tracks. Now we also have the folder child tracks for media Razor editing. So I'll add another track. So on this first track, I'm just going to add in a empty MIDI item. Currently, it's not affecting anything. That's just based on the settings that are in that menu here. So that was media Razor edit grouping affects items that start and end at the same time. And let's put this on enclosed by the edited item. And now, oh, I didn't have the grouping on. There we go. So now we see the outline that they are grouped, and I can move this around as a group. I can split it, I can fade it, and all of these work together. If we have that start or end at the same time, it's basically going to be the same in this particular situation, because these end at the same time. I think I can, yeah. This one's independent of the others unless it aligns with one of the others, and now they're grouped. I believe I showed that in a different video. Now if I do the folder sibling tracks, that is, so the items on the folder track are independent of items that are underneath within the folder. So items that have the same hierarchy, I guess you could call it. Let's make a turn off grouping. Let's add another one of these under this, and this will be a folder of that, and then re-enable grouping. So automatically group sibling tracks for Razor editing. Now these three are siblings. They have the same hierarchy within the folder. So that works like that. And this one is independent. And the folder is independent. Or we could put folder child tracks for media Razor editing. And now everything here, if I do enclosing, that's all grouped. And these are independent. So different ways of having that grouping work with folders and the child grouping stuff. Now this also works on hidden tracks. So if I hide this Edge Jam 3 glued and I edit this, I'll move all of these over here. I'll bring back all tracks. That hidden track stayed within the group, which is a very useful thing, I think. And I probably should show you that hidden thing working without the automatic grouping function. So let's take these 3 tracks. We will turn on our group settings. We will do razor edit, lead, and follow. Okay, so if I do a razor edit, it applies to all 3. I will hide these 2 tracks, right? And so if I do a razor edit, let's just cut that section and bring back all tracks, we can see that because those tracks were grouped and we're doing a razor edit on a track, the edits on the items within those razor edit areas apply to even the hidden tracks. This is actually a really great thing for drum editing and arrangement where you want to maybe work on the limited number of tracks that allow you to see your full arrangement. When you make those edits, everything gets propagated across to all the individual tracks that make up your stems or your buses or whatever. So these are really helpful editing features to simplify things, to show as few tracks in the timeline as you need to make large edits. MIDI Editor. Add actions to move resized notes snapping to grid. Add actions to move CC events left and right to grid. Add action to shrink item to last event. All right, let's add in a MIDI item here. Yeah, let's just put in some notes here. I don't have a MIDI controller connected right now, so I'll just draw in some notes, okay? So taking this note here, if it starts off the grid by a bit, right? Here's the grid line. It's a little gap. We can move the notes left to grid. That will snap its start to the nearest grid line. If we continue to press that button, it will then it will move the entire note over to the left to that grid line. We can also move notes right to grid. And that movement is based on its start position. It doesn't change the length, but it does move the start of that note to the nearest grid line, either left or right, depending on these actions that you're using. There's also move CC events left by grid, to grid. If you're unsure of which ones are new, look at the command ID numbers. So these 43459, they're newer than the 4064. I'm going to turn off snap to grid. And I'm in the pitch lane. I'll just add in a point or two. And so the second point that I added in is not on the grid lines. Hopefully you can see that it's between points. I'll run this action, move CC events left to grid, and we'll move left to the nearest grid line. And if I continue to run this, it will step by the grid amount backwards. What happens when we select both? They both move. That's pretty useful. There's also an action to shrink your item to the last event. So if you freehand wrote something in and you want the item end to snap to the end of that last event, the last MIDI CC you sent, or the last the note off, you can search for shrink. Shrink item to last event, and that will automatically trim your item back to the end of the last note off, or if there was MIDI CC data, it would trim that as well. Let's show that. I'll just put in some points there, run that action again, shrink item to last event, and it goes right to the end of the last MIDI CC, which you could see because I was scrolled off screen, but there you go. Actions. Add action to move items envelope points left, right to grid. Add actions to show resolved render path in Explorer/Finder. Automatically select marker when running action to navigate to marker. So just like in the MIDI editor, we have actions to move items or envelope points within the range view left and right to the nearest grid line, and then by the grid amount from there on. So that's the actions for to grid. Move. Item edit, move item envelope points left to grid. So this item that's selected should move to the left to that grid line. There it is. And then from there, it will jump to previous bar. Yeah. So it's snapped to grid, and then it's moved by grid, all kind of in one action. So this is different from like a nudge action where it would retain this amount of offset and then kind of move that over like that if we were to nudge by the grid amount. If we want it to align with the grid and then continue to move it, then we do that. If we want to open up the Finder or Explorer window for the current render location, we go to Render, Finder, Show Path, maybe just Render Path. And then my Reaper Media folder shows up, but any of my projects, it would show kind of the project folder or really whatever is set in when we go to File, Render. Whatever directory is selected here, let's do desktop. So let's say we choose the desktop and we save the settings and then close the window. We can find that render path and now it's desktop. Automatically selecting the marker when we navigate to it. So selecting the marker is like literally clicking on it. I'm going to navigate by just like tabbing through the markers, and it selects that marker. You can also set your the transport home end buttons for markers, and they are selected that way as well. I don't use the shortcuts 1 through 9 for marker navigation, but it'd be the same thing. Ripple editing. Add various ripple editing settings to new submenu of options menu. So as you know, there is the ripple editing button in the main toolbar. If we right click it, there's a bunch of options here. All of these options are now in options. We have ripple edit. We have these ripple editing enable buttons as well as the edit settings. So all the edit settings from the toolbar button are also in the options menu. Sample edits. Add action to delete sample edits or set sample edits to 0. Add action to set sample edits to a straight line or an interpolated curve. Allow sample edit scale dialog to remain open while toggling playback, etc. Support editing when peak display mode is mono or take channel mode is mono downmix. Channels are edited identically. When running sample edit actions, automatically activate sample edits if zoomed in far enough. When sample edit scale dialog open, changing time selection or razor edit area changes the target samples for the dialog. Add mouse modifier, control drag by default to draw vertically. Add mouse modifier, control alt drag by default to draw vertically, fine adjustment. Show sample value in decibels in tooltip. Spectrogram. Zoomed in spectrogram display previews sample edits. So we first talked about sample edits in Reaper 7.70. So clearly lots of things have changed since then. So we can activate a sample edit by going to take and then take sample edits. We can enable that. And then if we're zoomed in close enough, we can draw on the individual sample points, really. And so those are only available when kind of zoomed in this far, which is not very far, but you kind of, when you're editing 48,000 samples, you kind of have to be pretty close. So we can edit things within time selection, right click on one of the sample points, and you get this little dialog. We can set the sample value to 0. That's going to affect just that one single sample that was selected. We can bypass the sample edit, bring it back to default. Let's re-enable that. We make a time selection, and then we can affect the different channels here. All channels, delete sample edits in time selection, set values to 0 in time selection. Let's do that. And so that effectively mutes that section. So it sounds like this. It's just a very small click, but I've silenced however many samples in there. We can scale the sample values. It's already at 0, so we can't really, but you can see that if I change the time selection range, this window updates as well. Set that really low. Let's slide this over. You know, that sort of thing. Maybe a larger time selection. Yeah, so, you know, you don't have to commit these settings immediately. You can kind of move that time selection around. And all this stuff just has to be kind of on screen for it to work. Clear all sample edits. Okay. Now let's do the all channels interpolated curve. Gets that shape. There are also more sample edit actions. Delete sample edits within time selection for all channels at mouse. Select a channel at the mouse or all channels. Scaling for all channels or just one channel. Setting values to a straight line for all channels or just the selected channel or the channel at the mouse. The interpolated curve for all channels or some channels. So these are actions that require the mouse pointer to be over a sample value or to at least be over the channel that you want to affect for that to work. And these will have to be assigned to keyboard shortcuts because you can't click them in the action list because then the action list has focus. You need to be pointing and then hitting a button. Control drag to modify vertically. So we got Alt was deleting, Command is vertically, and then the Control key is like freehand drawing. I'm going to set my peaks display mode to spectrogram and peaks. And as I make changes to the to each channel here, you can see that happening in the waveform. If I set this to a mono item, you can maybe see that more clearly. Region Manager. Add entry to Options menu to display and copy out total length of selected regions. All right, so let's add in a couple regions here. 1, 2, 3. Go to View menu and Region Manager. And in the Options menu, total length of selected regions is 0, but if I select these regions, let's select region 1 and 3. Go to Options. You can see that that is 7 seconds and 337 milliseconds, and we can click to copy that as text. And the text looks like just the numbers. Track templates. Add option to insert at end of project rather than at selected track. Inserting a track template. If we right-click in the empty area, insert track from template, we can now have this option insert track templates at end of project. You can just enable that and then pick your template. Let's say 3-band splitter and insert track from template. Let's just do my basic track folders, and that goes down at the end rather than, you know, right after track number 1, which was the last track that I touched. If I turn off that option, insert track template at end of project, it's going to go to right after the last track that I touched. Let's do video link controls. And so that's right after the last touch track. That seems to me like it's a per project option. So you can apply this to new projects going forward by saving this into your default project template. If you're not using a default project template, going to project settings. After you set that in your project, you should be able to hit save as default project settings, and that will go forward into your next project. Support building multi-mono or multi-stereo effects containers. Multi-mono, multi-stereo containers process all channels in parallel via separate effects instances with linked parameters. Support multi-effects that do not exactly match the track channel count. Label non-primary instances as linked if all parameters are linked to the primary instance. When creating multi-effects within a container, use the container channel count. Display parameter sections in TCP controls context menu. Support linking, unlinking effects parameters directly from param drop-down menu. So this is a pretty cool one. This is basically a way to get any plugin that you like as a multi-mono or surround version. I've got a track here, just stereo, but I can process this in basically a dual mono option. So let's just pick a plugin. Let's take a compressor, this Comp FET 76 from Arturia. I'll add it to the track. If I right click, build multi-mono effects. And so that puts this and a copy of that plugin separated for left channel, right channel, or channel 1, channel 2, separate instances. The controls are all linked and they're inside of a container. I can move the input and they both move together. Change everything. So these are two mono devices, each getting their own signal, which you can see here. Channel 1 out, receiving from the container, sending out back to the container, and the actual container itself, it's 2 ins, 2 outs. It's a mono compressor affecting only the left side, mono compressor affecting only the right side, completely unlinked processing, but linked controls. Meaning that if there is a sudden loud peak on the left channel, it's not going to affect compression on the right channel. Sometimes you want that, sometimes you don't. Sometimes it doesn't matter at all. And that'll just be a little bit different than just processing in stereo. So it does take a little more CPU because it is 2 instances of the plugin, but we've just saved a ton of time by not having to manually link all those controls. And I think that's kind of the big benefit here. So that's multi-mono. I'll just remove all of that. So let's set this track to be a let's go 6-channel track. Again, let's add in a plugin. Let's take a different plugin. Let's do Goblin from Aurora DSP. And let's make that a multi-stereo effects. So we got primary, linked. These are 3 instances of the plugin. You can pop them all out and see that they are all moving together on every parameter, which is pretty useful. How's this sound? Hell yeah. Hell yeah. You know, there's times when you have multi-channel audio, you want to add, let's say, a low cut to all of them, and you want them to be the same parameters. This is like 2 clicks rather than inserting the plugin repeatedly, going into the plugin channel pickers and setting all of that manually. This is basically taking any plugin in your collection, kind of making it a surround version, immersive version of that plugin. One other new thing here is for plugin parameter linking. So I'm going to adjust the low cut. I'll go to param, and for the last touch thing, we have this effects parameter link. What I last touched, I want it to move when I adjust this other thing, and it can be in this plugin or something else in the chain. When I adjust the more control, that is adjusting both. So the amount of distortion determines also the low cut. If we want to remove that, we can remove that parameter link. This is a new submenu. We can link it to something else, or we can click on this button to get all of the adjustments. So maybe offset it by 50%. Let's try that. You know, we change your mind about something, as long as that's the last one you touched, is right here to be able to remove that link, and now they're independent. And that's it for this one. Hopefully that has been informative and useful, and let me know in the comments what your favorite new addition is. Will you be using these multi-mono or multi-stereo versions of effects, or the effects containers? Are you going to be using that? Let me know in the comments. If you missed any of the previous update videos, I'll have a link to the playlist that goes all the way back to 5.0. If you like what I'm doing with the Reaper blog and want to support that, you can become a channel member on YouTube or a patron on Patreon. I'll have links to those down below. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Follow me on Facebook and Blue Sky. Support the Reaper blog on Patreon and visit reaper.blog for more tutorials.